Today we're talking guardianship.
It's Wednesday. The conversation starts now. It's Wednesday on Foster Live. How's everybody doing today?
Doing good.
Great.
We got Nick Venuti in the house today. He's our attorney for Foster Life, and he brings us all the good information. And you're involved in foster care in a lot of different ways, not just with us.
Right. In the juvenile system, of course, every case you have foster placements and potential adoptive placements, potential guardianship placements. So yeah.
So he does the guardian ad litem. Also, you are an attorney for adoptions.
Yes, and I represent parents in the juvenile court in Greene County as well.
Oh, cool.
So I do kind of both.
Yeah, so he's very, very involved. How are you doing for a Wednesday?
I'm doing pretty good.
Are you ready for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm honestly ready for this week to be over with. So.
Oh, it's been that bad?
I've had better ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna have a good show today.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta tell you, the cool thing about starting something new is we had a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he messaged me that they were changing one of his placements in his foster home to guardianship. And so when they got to court, the judge asked him, "Now, have you been explained about how guardianship works and the differences and things like that?" And him and his wife were like, no. So the guardianship went through, but he had watched our episode on TPR, termination of parental rights, which, Nick, you did that, and it's had thousands of views, thank goodness. And so he had watched that, and then he sent me an email, and he said, "Could you do one on guardianship, because we didn't know all the ins and outs and how it works and why they do it." And I thought about it. I don't know why they do guardianship and the ins and outs either. So I thought, hey, let's have Nick. So I sent him back. I said, I'm going to get it on our production schedule, and I'll get our attorney in, and he can talk to us about guardianship. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm excited. I like when we learn stuff like yesterday, or last week, actually, not yesterday, but last week we were talking about human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
I knew nothing about any. Did you know
I
all
only
that
scratched
stuff?
the surface on what is actually out there about that
Yeah,
topic.
I knew nothing. And so when we learn all of this stuff, and I've already told several people about this and what to watch for and all this stuff already, and we just shot that last week. So I'm excited to learn about guardianship today and the ins and outs of it, and I hope that you have some good information for us. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Nick Venuti about guardianship right here
on Foster.
I love music, and it seems like music affects you in so many ways. No matter if you have good times, bad times, or just cruising through life, music is a part of our society. If you're a musician and you've been influenced by foster care, adoption, or you have a story that ties you to foster care or adoption, we want to hear from you because I love music.
I love music too, so send those fantastic stories to producers.fostertv@gmail.com.
You got it? Welcome back to Foster Life. Today we're at the middle of the week. The weekend is coming. It's in our sight. We must be really kind of socialites or something, because you and I are always looking forward to the weekend. Courtney talks about the weekends a lot too when she's on the show, so I guess we must like time off.
Yeah.
And
Well, after getting that pool put together, I'm going to be swimming this weekend. That's what I'm excited
it's
about.
April. You're not going to be swimming in no
If it's
pool.
warm enough, I'm going to be.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you probably will. So today we're talking about guardianship on Foster Life. So to get started, Nick, what are some of the surrounding circumstances that you would even go to guardianship in a foster situation?
Well, it's in a guardianship case, say in a juvenile case, when you normally have that time where a parent is allowed to try to reunify. Almost always the initial goal is reunification for up to a year.
Yeah.
And at that time, the judge sees if there's any progress, and if not, he can order a couple of things. One of them can be to order, like in Greene County, the juvenile office to file a termination petition.
Right.
An alternative to that termination is maybe a guardianship with a family member or somebody that's like a kinship type.
Oh, okay.
So a guardianship would be an alternative to a termination, whereas the termination forever terminates the parental rights. The guardianship leaves those intact, but it just creates a new natural guardian. So in most of our cases, or in most of the real world, when their children are with their parents, the parents are the natural guardians. When they're either unable, unfit, or unwilling for a time, then a guardianship can be created.
So the first thing that pops into my head when I hear this, say an aunt or a sister to the bio parents does this guardianship, and nothing changes with the bio parents. Can it then change to adoption once it goes to guardianship, or once it's at guardianship, that's kind of where it just stays?
Well, I think that if things change in the future, and say the children have no contact, or if they're abandoned, if there's certain factual circumstances, the people who have guardianship could go back and make a petition for adoption.
Oh, okay.
So they could ask for that to take place. Keeping in mind that in guardianship, the biological parents don't have rights to custody, contact. Now, a recent change in Missouri does allow, if a guardianship's in place, it allows the biological parents to go back to court and ask for a written contact schedule.
Oh, okay.
If it's in the best interest of the children, which is a huge change. Before, they were essentially a closed guardianship, where once it was granted, the parent had no rights to see the child at all.
Right.
So in some limited circumstances, you're seeing where the parents are allowed some contact.
And that would actually, I'm thinking about this, that would be kind of good if they went through, like a correctional facility, or they went to a place where they got help, and then they came out of that program, and I could see where that contact might be helpful for them if they have gotten some help that they need and assistance or whatever. And I would assume those would probably be like supervised contacts or...
Well, I mean, really, if the new guardian believes that unsupervised contact or contact at a certain level is acceptable and in the best interest of the children, they're the new gatekeepers.
Oh, okay.
Just like a parent could. If a parent said, hey, you bring value to my child's life and you're safe, you can come over and hang out with us at the pool or something. They would be the gatekeeper now, including the biological parents. They could tell them, you can't come by here, or yes, why don't we get together for dinner every Saturday night or something? So yeah, one of the downsides to guardianship is that it does leave the biological parents' rights intact. So at some point in the future, if they feel like they have rectified the issues, they can go back and petition the court to dissolve the guardianship, which would restore them as the natural guardians.
Okay.
The problem you run into with that is sometimes the biological parents aren't doing as well as they think they're doing, but yet they keep going back to court on a regular basis.
Oh.
And even if you win in court, it costs money. So that's one of the resistance that I see in little children as far as guardianships, because the concern is if a case is closed with guardianship, that those biological parents could keep going back to court for years, dragging the guardians in and saying, we're good now. And even if the judge says, no, you're not, the potential guardians could be spending a lot of money.
Right, and I'm thinking about the family that has the kids. That would be kind of you know what I mean? Because you kind of want that consistency. I mean, we're really open if with our adopted children, if their parents are on track, we involve them in certain things. But if we were be a petition to go to court and, keeping that going, that's kind of a roller coaster. You would think that would be a little bit
Well, say it's
hard.
the aunt that's taking care of the child, and then they always have those petitions coming. Well, it may cause bad relationships within the family even as well.
I think it keeps it confrontational. Whereas in your situation, you're the gatekeeper and you say, hey, if you're doing well, come and spend time with us.
Right.
You have the right to do that. There, if the biological parent says, well, I'm coming anyway, they just go back to court and keep petitioning, and it could be a battle for a long time.
Right. So, in reality, when they do a guardianship, the whoever's going to be the guardian is really being kind of generous in doing that and not having those rights terminated.
Yeah, they're taking on a lot of risk, that's true.
Uh-huh.
I see it in a lot of cases where you have older children in care and they already know their biological parents and they want to maintain some relationship. So a guardianship is done, and usually there's still contact with the child and their biological parents. And you may have another couple years or two before the child is an adult.
Oh, okay.
15, 16, 17-year-olds. Termination of parental rights doesn't make a whole lot of sense
Right.
at that age.
Yeah. When we come back on Foster Life, we're going to talk more about guardianship, and I want to talk to Nick about subsidy and benefits and all of that stuff and see what all applies there. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Mitchell. I'm from the Netherlands and we love foster care.
Welcome back to Foster Life. Today we are with Nick Venuti and we are talking about guardianship. And Tristan was bringing up some good points at the break. What are some things that you were thinking about when he was talking?
Well, I was thinking, is it just kin that can be guardians, or is it different, just say a couple that come into the fostering care or adoption care and then see that they have an opportunity to be a guardian for a kid?
Yeah, there's really no limitation on who can be a guardian other than you have to be over the age of 18. Obviously, you have to be an adult. So, yeah, I mean, if you had a placement, even a foster placement, in theory, could agree, a traditional foster placement could agree to be guardians and end a case in guardianship.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm thinking sometimes we take these kids in and these cases get drug out and they've been in care for a long time, and so that is an option that they could say, hey, we've had this kid for 4 years. Is guardianship's a possibility?
I mean, I guess it's always a possibility. I think as the children get older, they have some say in that as well. So yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. You look at the whole picture, how the biological parents are doing. Are they still trying? Sometimes that year runs out and they're making efforts, but they're not really in the position to be a primary caretaker yet. And that kind of allows them to maintain their legal rights as a parent.
Right.
But we have somebody else can step in and make sure the child is taken care of and gets to school and all the things you got to do every day.
Right. A lot of people that foster or are a part of the system, a lot of families, we really don't do it for money. Because we're not paid real well, especially in the state of Missouri. I think we're the second lowest paying state in the 50 states, but it helps because it helps with expenses, clothes and things. And I know Ethan and I, if they're going to play football, we want them to have the cleats that everybody else has. We don't want them to just have the cheapo stuff. So it does help. So do they still get their subsidy and all of that type of thing, the family?
Yeah, there is a subsidy still, and it works pretty much the same. I would kind of agree with you. Nobody gets in this for the money.
Right.
Exactly. But yeah, there'll be a subsidy there. I don't know exactly how it correlates to an adoption subsidy, but it's comparable.
Yeah.
I think.
As before we move on, a gentleman at our church one time told Ethan and I that the reason that we do this, and he wasn't being mean, is because we make so much money. And so the next week we went to church and I had it all figured out for him. And with the kids that we had, we made $1.75 an hour. And I said, when was the last time that you took a job making $1.75 an hour?
Yeah.
So we're not in it for the money,
No.
but it does help. And
Sure.
and so the subsidy. So some of the other benefits, like they get, I'm looking at our kids. There's the education benefit. There's CASA workers. There's that kind of stuff. Does that stuff all still apply to them? The Chafee worker and all of that, or how does that typically work?
Some of it does. Of course, when the juvenile case closes, the guardian ad litem goes away, the juvenile court goes away, caseworker goes away. There's still the subsidy worker. There's a Chafee worker that will still come out. There's still services, and of course, depending on how old the child is when they get out of care, when the case closes, there'll still be benefits available there too. Medicaid until age 26, college to 23, I think. So there's some really good benefits there that'll help a young adult get out of college with no debt, which is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's still a lot of things there, but the good news is they get out of the system. They don't have to keep coming to court, and they want to be normal. They want to have a regular life. And that's how you do with us around.
When it comes to the education, is it based on the guardian's income, on how much they receive? I know how for me, whenever I went to college, it was kind of based on where I lived and what kind of income my parents made was the kind of grant that I got for school.
No, I think that the college benefits will just be there. I think there's some federal grants you have to apply for, and then this picks up the rest of it.
Okay.
So like here at OTC, a community college, you can go through that whole thing in 2 years and not owe a dime.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's a really neat chance for these kids to kind of get caught up to where maybe their peers are that have parents that are investing in them and putting time and effort. So it's a really necessary thing.
wife. Oh, I learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
from Nick.
Yes.
And I recently, I think about that guy, the construction guy that was in here that was giving me a bid to remodel our studios.
Uh-huh.
And he was talking about their family owns a bunch of apartment complexes. And so his dad had kind of got attached to this little boy that lived in one of their apartment complexes. And the kids were taken away. They were brought into custody. And his mom and dad, who were not foster parents at all, because they had built this relationship and had invited them to dinner and stuff, the state asked, hey, could he come stay for a while? And a while turned into they adopted him right before Christmas. And so I think about that probably, if they weren't looking to adopt, that could have turned into a guardianship type thing if they had that relationship with them.
Sure. The day-to-day workings of an adoption and a guardianship are very similar.
Oh, okay.
You know, I mean, when you're adoptive parent, you make the calls, you make the decisions about where they go, who they see, who they don't see. You ground them and you take their cell phone. A guardian does that too.
Right.
There's just that somewhat temporary part of a guardianship where, in theory, if a parent can straighten out the things that needed straightening out, and it's in the best interest of the child, then a guardianship can be dissolved.
Oh, okay.
Now, when it comes to who can have a guardian, is it from newborns to you're an adult, or what's the age range?
Well, really, there's no age limit. Outside of the juvenile system, you see guardianships of adults where somebody doesn't have the capacity to take care of themselves. A lot of times a public administrator, things like that. In the juvenile system, you can see it from babies to 21-year-olds. The reason you don't see it a lot in the younger babies, here I can speak for in Greene County, is that I think they prefer for it to be kind of, if it comes down to that point and the goal is changed from reunification to switch it to adoption, it would allow to kind of clear the deck. And you wouldn't, when we closed the case and we all went away and the free attorney went away, when those biological parents came back and tried to get back into the child's life, they would be able to do that.
So if you had the TPR trial,
Mhm.
so you had your trial, and then the judge decides that we're not going to do TPR yet. He must have some faith in the family. Could you at that time do a guardianship or ask for a guardianship? You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, at any time you could do that.
Right.
A guardianship can take place at any time, and when it did in the juvenile system, it would close out the juvenile case.
Right.
As guardianships are thought of as temporary, juvenile cases are really temporary. They're only meant to be open for a short period of time.
Right.
So yeah, I guess you could do that. I mean, I guess the question would be, why did the judge feel termination wasn't warranted? And is it because the parents are close to getting them back, or some other reason?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think the issue is going to be in a guardianship with those biological parents, will they agree, or is it going to be another contested court battle? I got to tell you, as a guardian ad litem, I don't prefer contested guardianships.
Right.
Because it tells me maybe the biological parents don't fully comprehend the issues that they have, and if they're fighting at that time, they're probably going to keep fighting long after we're gone, and
Oh, yeah.
we're kind of dooming these new guardians financially.
Yeah, I can understand that, because there would not be. So that's something that you just brought up a good point. You would be responsible for your own legal bills
Yeah.
at that point once you did guardianship. Yeah. So if they dissolve it,
The guardianship?
yeah. So if they dissolve the guardianship, what does that mean?
Well, there's two ways it can happen. Let's say a guardianship is granted.
Right.
3 years later, maybe mom comes to the guardian and says, hey, I've turned my life around. Whatever thing was stopping me from being able and willing to parent, I've fixed it. If the guardian agrees, it's very simple. You can go and just sign letters and dissolve the guardianship, and the court will do that. If the biological parent says, I've made changes and the guardian disagrees, then the parent would file something to try to dissolve the guardianship. At that point, they have to prove that they've rectified those issues, one, and that it's in the best interest of the child. I could see where if a child lived in the same home for 10 years, you might be able to prove as a parent you fixed those problems, but is it in the best interest to pull a child from a home he's been at for 10 years? I mean, that's a big hurdle to jump.
Yeah, that is a big.
Now, if it is simple, everything goes smoothly as far as dissolving, where do they go to sign the paperwork?
It would be in the probate court,
Okay.
the same place where you would do the guardianship. Eventually you go back, and I've heard of it happening before, where, a grandparent or somebody will take guardianship and believe that their child will get things together, and years later they do. And they say, hey, you're ready to be the day-to-day caretaker? I'm signing off. I agree.
But it doesn't open up with family services again? I mean, family services doesn't have to come in and say, yeah, they are appropriate now, or?
No.
No.
At that point, the juvenile system has been long gone.
Yeah.
I would like to think that a guardian wouldn't potentially put the child back in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then I would imagine
But on some of these
children's vision could
kinship,
come back.
yeah, on some of these kinship, I've been in some of those meetings, and they're so close knit and intertwined and stuff. Yeah, so to me, that just seems, and maybe I'm just overprotective, but that seems a little scary to me. Because you're like, wow. I mean, I guess you just have to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row.
Well, and you have to believe your guardian's strong enough to weather those storms and be the bad guy, and when everybody in the family's beating on you to dissolve the guardianship, if
Right.
you stand your ground if you feel that the
Yeah.
parent's not ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of, like, if grandma has guardianship and grandma gets real sick or something, would she just sign it over just to make sure that the child stays, in the home or whatever?
Well,
and so.
You could look into a successor guardian.
Uh-huh.
You could say, hey, I'm the guardian and we need somebody else that
Right.
can take the child to the hospital and enroll them in school, all those things that parents normally do, adoptive parents do. And if they're not able to do it anymore, yeah, they could suggest a successor guardian at that point. I would assume if anybody else wanted to contest that, that's what courthouses are for.
Right.
They might go down and say, no, I think Uncle Bob should be instead, or,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So the judge grants the guardianship. So then what do you do?
Well, honestly, you start living. The juvenile case is closed, just like after adoption.
Oh, okay.
It's in my mind, it's a celebration because it's closure.
Right.
And the parents know what they need to do to work on things, and it allows the child to kind of get back to somewhat of a normal life again.
So they can they can get everybody removed at school, as far as it's just in those parents, and they can say under no circumstances is bio mom and bio dad, just like we do for an adoption.
Yeah. You can exclude everybody, or you can make it a list of, here's the people that are allowed to come
Yep.
pick the child up,
Yep.
and nobody else.
Right.
Yeah, and
Cool.
it's the same authority that a biological parent would have, adoptive parent would have.
Super.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to wrap up guardianship right after this on Foster Love.
Foster TV is looking for 12 nonprofits in the United States that serve or work with foster and adopted youth. Send us a short story or email about how you support the community.
So send your story today.
It's a case-by-case thing. Now, your state might be different than, some of the things that Nick mentioned, but we're just opening up the conversation today, and we're just letting you get some information about guardianship. If you have information that you'd like to share, please share it in the comments and keep this conversation going. May 11th, where will we be?
We'll be in Branson, Missouri.
Yeah, so we're supposed to be in Branson for a fundraiser. Then it snowed and iced and had cruddy weather, and so they rescheduled it. We'll be there May 11th. If you work at a residential facility or a foster family, no foster kids that are in care, bring them up, and we're going to have food. We are going to have Branson entertainers. We're going to be doing a show. We're going to be playing putt-putt. We're just going to have a really fun day, and I believe they're bringing one of them food trucks.
Really?
Yeah, up
That's
there,
great.
and so I think it's just going to be a lot of fun. And I don't think I want to say that we're going to celebrate foster care, but we are going to celebrate, with families that work together and just have a good time, and it'll be good. So May 11th, come to that. If you'd like to see Tristan and I this summer, Rob and Tristan on tour. My old show used to be Rob and Mimi on tour on the bus. Well, Rob and Tristan on tour on the bus will be coming to your area. If you'd like us to come to your area, you can email us at producer.fostertv@gmail.com. We will come and work with foster parents, adoptive parents, and kinship parents, or if you would like us to come to your area and work with your bio parents, we will do a workshop on how to help stay on track and the things that you can do to be successful in order to get reunification, which that's always our goal, and that's what we wish could be for every child that comes into care. Friday. I'm sure we have a good show. I'm not sure what the show is.
Courtney knows. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure Courtney knows. We actually just brought her on. She's our new segment producer, and she's actually been doing this for a couple of months for us, but she actually has the title now, and she has a lot of good things coming up in the next couple of months right here on Foster Life. We'll see you on Friday. Bye.